Welcome to Dive Deep. Today we continue the discussion of our series, Love God, Love People. Our goal in this podcast is to deepen your relationship with God and equip you to live out your faith in ways that change the community around you. I'm Pastor Branden, and joining me today is Pastor Arlie Davis. How you doing, Pastor Arlie?
I'm great. Thank you, Branden.
Well, that's good to hear. I have a question for you.
All right.
Yesterday, after service, I had someone come up and ask me an interesting question. He asked how we could be loving and not allow people into our homes. In your outline, you referenced the scripture 2 John 1:10 that says, if anyone comes to your meeting and does not teach the truth about Christ, don't invite that person into your home or give any kind of encouragement. He said that actually sounded kind of hateful. Don't we want those certain people so we can be a good example on them? And then, love still has those boundaries. Can you explain that a little bit? I know you did in your sermon a little bit, but maybe not all of our viewers heard that.
And that's really true because thank you so much for picking up the sermon at Sunbury and teaching it, even though you hadn't had advance notice because we had some technical issues that happened. And I did talk about it, but just to kind of refresh it a little bit, because I think it's a significant point, because I believe it's really important all about boundaries and what they need to be in our world and how we need to handle those. Because oftentimes as Christians, we kind of feel like we're supposed to accept whatever comes to us, and we shouldn't really kick back or put up boundaries. We're just supposed to let people like run over top of us if they want to, and then we're just supposed to say thank you very much and deal with it. Where this is a classic point where Scripture really helps us to see that there are certain times that we need to put up boundaries in our world. And this particular situation has a cultural background, and the cultural background in this is that each of the little villages or the little towns that existed at that point, if a person came into that town, it was a new person, they were kind of like a non-person unless somebody identified with them. And so if somebody identified with them and would welcome them into their home, then they were basically endorsing everything that person would say. And so by endorsing it, they're saying, hey, this person is speaking truth and I agree with everything. So that's the kind of status that was given to that person when they were invited into a home. There were hotels that were available that people could actually attend or go to, but they were rather seedy and they didn't have such a good reputation. So you can imagine how they were used, even at that time period, kind of less than a Motel 6, if we can kind of figure that out. And so most times people were invited into their home, and they had like a spare room or a prophet's chamber, they used to call them, where somebody could just stay and they could be able to teach while they're there. And so there was a real caution that they said, wait a minute, please be careful about who you would let into your home, and you're recognizing them as people that you believe in what they're saying. So don't just open your doors to anybody. First test to find out. And that's why we're told both in 1 John and in 2 John, he's telling us there are those who are anti-Christ, like not the Antichrist, but they're against Christ. And so if you're not careful about who you let into your home, you can really destroy a lot of people and have them go that same way. And so the parallel today, and certainly this doesn't mean you shouldn't be friends with, like, say, an atheist or somebody who's against God. Go ahead and be friends with them, try to reach them with the gospel. But in that culture, that was a little bit different on how they had to handle it. What I say, how do we transfer that into our culture today? People watch things. They invite those into their home on their television. It's just like a guest that they're inviting into their home. They're watching things that aren't really helpful, or they may be against Christ, or they may be things that could be damaging. Well, I'm not going to share that with other people because I could be destructive to their, spiritual journey and where they are. So the caution that is there, does it seem like it's not loving? Oh, yeah. But boundaries always feel that way to the person who has to put those up. They kind of feel like, is this really loving to tell them that you can't speak to me that way? Because I won't stand here and be abused. It feels like, wait a minute, I don't know, is that the loving thing to do? It really is. There's a time when we have to be able to do that. And biblically, it's supported all throughout Scripture. There's multiple places where it talks about the importance of boundaries. And so I think that we as Christians need to make sure we're going to put down some boundaries in our world, and it's okay to stand by them and to live by them.
Yeah, I love that parallel where, because of the TV, we can bring almost any influence in. And so many churches now are streaming where you could watch any preacher from around the world, really.
Yeah.
And so you are letting that person in your home through the television.
Absolutely.
I love that parallel when you said that, because it's just so true. We need to be careful. Like when my 1.5-year-old is home and we're watching TV, you are a little bit more careful on what.
Aren't you?
I'm a lot more careful.
Absolutely.
With like, oh, Brinkley can't see this. What's this?
Right.
That's why I love sports too, because she can watch football with me, and I'll be fine. But there's
There
certain
you go.
things, but you're inviting through the avenue of the media,
Absolutely.
and that's really, really, really good and an important concept.
And it's an important thing. And I think that, even like in what we give endorsement to, I think that kind of caution goes to all of us in, like, if we watch something or if we support something, I think there has to be some cautions that come along with that we have to really be careful about. Because would I support this? I may watch something and then I'll think, would I really want to tell people about this so that they watched it too? No, I wouldn't. Maybe I shouldn't watch it anymore. Because if I can't endorse it, maybe I need to make sure I'm a little more careful about that. And, there are a lot of religious groups. And here's the thing that I think is really challenging is there's really some great worship music by places that I would not endorse. And they kind of scare me in their doctrinal perspective. But the worship music is awesome. So, what do we have to do there, and how do we have to be cautious and concerning about that? So I just think there's a lot of things that, give us pause.
It sounds like 2 John chapter 1, verse 10, we could extract that, and you can do a future sermon just on that, just what you said. Really almost needs honed in our church culture with today of what we allow in. So maybe a future sermon there, Pastor Arlie. So John wrote this letter to a particular woman and her children in a household. If you wrote a letter to a particular person or church or denomination even, who would it be and what might you say to them?
Wow. I think I would want to probably write a letter that was a broader context. And if I could write a letter like right now, I think it would be helping people to realize the influences that are a part of our culture and our setting and how damaging it can be if we don't think through the whole process of how it's going to impact others. I think there's a lot of the emotional decisions that are being made in our world today. In every area. And I think people make those emotional decisions without realizing the implications of how much it's going to affect and the ripple kind of thing. And I think if I could do that, I think I would probably write a letter that would be reinforcing the importance of clear, thoughtful, and logical kind of decisions that would really be biblically based.
So a lot of these letters were written to particular area churches like Philippi, Ephesus,
Timothy.
Could you maybe write a letter to America, the American church? I don't know what you would title that book, but what you just said, I think, encompasses what we're seeing in America with the American church. It might be an interesting thing for you to just do. And if you're so inclined, maybe share that letter with us. I think that could be a really, really cool thing for you to do with your experience.
Well, I think that in our culture, that so much is emotionally driven rather than thoughtfully processed. Because we have people that are impacted, and we have people who maybe share those perspectives. And so when we have all of those things, we make decisions based on that. And that's why oftentimes when I'm trying to make a great decision, I'll say, tell me the information without telling me the person. And let me just think that through first. And then I hear all of it and I can make a conclusion. Then I say, okay, tell me who it is. And then when I hear who it is, like I might have wanted to be different, but that's not a good process way to work through it. So I need to make the decisions without knowing the persons.
I think our listeners could really benefit and maybe want you to write a certain letter to the American church. I for one, would read it. Now, 2 John is one of the shortest books, being one chapter.
It is. It's one of the shortest books in the Bible.
I know, but it's filled with a lot of impact, I believe. So in your study and in the further things,
and that was the problem, because my sermon went too long.
Over 40 minutes, but I feel like it could probably been over an hour if you really gave us everything. So here exclusively on Dive Deep, maybe what is something, another aspect that you've studied that you want the listeners to come away with this week?
I really loved the balance that I kind of talked a little bit in Dive Deep last week, a little this week, but a balance of spirit and truth, and how that needs to be a part of all of our worship and who we are and what we do. We've got to have both of those function within us. And, when people are strongly truth, you can be very judgmental, very critical, very legalistic. Great dangers. That's if you go too far that way. If people are in spirit, they can be too forgiving. They don't have good boundaries, and they can be too emotionally charged. So, but when you have both spirit and truth, you get a balance. I feel worship needs to be balanced. I feel our services need to be balanced. Our lives need to be balanced. All of those things are functioning within a balance. So I think spirit and truth helps us to really function in a very balanced manner in all that we do.
If there was a biblical character that really exemplifies a life of living in spirit and truth to give an example to, who would you say to study?
Jesus.
Well, okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Welcome to Sunday school.
Yeah. First I was like, oh, man. And then,
sure. Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, no, it's Jesus.
But I think somebody would say, well, Jesus was God, and he was
man. And he was the most perfectly balanced person. So, yeah, let's follow his model. He did it right, and in spirit and in truth. And you saw some very strong confrontations in truth, where he was not reluctant. But then you saw the spirit that was, very, very charged by that loving compassion that was a part of that. And so there's that balance that was all there.
Yeah, good answer, Jesus, right there. Good,
I don't know anybody else. I don't know anybody else. I mean, because...
Well, you think of Paul...
Yeah.
Who wrote all these things. And Paul, in your sermon outline, actually told a specific church, imitate me because I imitate Christ.
As I imitate Christ.
Yeah. Because I imitate Christ. You can imitate me.
Right.
And know it'd kind of be like imitating Christ.
As I do. You keep watching.
It's funny to read it, though.
Yeah, you keep watching because as I'm imitating Christ. And so, but, there are times where Paul, I think, boy, I don't think I would have said that. In fact, he even apologized at one point. I wouldn't have said that if I didn't know who you were. I don't know about that. Paul was always as balanced in that.
Yeah.
But I see Jesus always balanced.
So maybe for people who have read the Gospels many times, maybe go back and read the Gospels with this. How did Jesus live in spirit and in truth?
Oh, that's great.
And how can I imitate?
That's awesome.
With that filter.
Yeah,
Well, Pastor Arlie, thank you for your time today. Thank you, listeners, for connecting with us on Dive Deep. If you value the time you've spent here today, I certainly have, and I know you have too, Pastor Arlie, join our mission to invest in others by rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast wherever you may listen from. Join us next Monday as we conclude our series, Love God, Love People. If you missed past episodes, check those out at cwc.life. Have a great week.